as well as being able to use these gouache colours straight from the tube, which is really how they are intended to be used and how they work to their best of their abilities. I do want to be able to put some in a palette, allow them to dry out. Just for convenience sake, I may want to be able to take the gouache with me if I'm out travelling, or I perhaps don't want to have to find a palette and be squeezing paint out. I just want to be able to go to a whole selection of colours really easily. And gouache can be popped in a palette, let dry and then re-wetted. So I popped on Amazon, bought myself an empty palette. This is a Meaden watercolour palette, holds 48 half pans. Pretty much standard palette, very similar to the Arteza watercolour palette that I reviewed the other day that came with 36 colours of watercolour in. So I'm going to put in the 48 non-metallic colours out of this set. There are 12 metallics in here and then 48 standard colours. Worked out really nicely actually, and I'm going to pop the 48 standard colours in this palette. Now, one downside to gouache drying out is it will crack, and it's just the way that it's made up, and it does crack. And I had a little look online, and there are a few tips to help avoid this. And the best one was to add a couple of drops of glycerin to your paint, mix it into the half pan. So I've got some glycerin here. I mean, this is easy enough to just pick up from your sort of chemist or supermarket. I've got a little pipette that I can just pop a couple of drops in each half pan. And I've got, this is just a pin that I can then stir it and mix it well in the half pan. So I'm going to go ahead and do this with the 48 colours. Probably not going to record the whole thing. I'll pop a couple in there and then come back at the end. Then obviously we'll let this dry and come back and show you how you can re-wet the paints and use them. And we'll do a little swatch and see if there's any difference to the paint direct out of the tube. I'm guessing it's going to be perhaps slightly more transparent, not as opaque by the time we're re-wetting it again. But in the meantime, I'm just going to go through, pop these in. I'm using the colour order that is on the box, just missing out the ones that are metallic. Filling my half pans. I've given everything a good mix to mix the glycerin in. Just going to leave this to dry overnight, and then we can come back tomorrow and swatch these out and see if there's any significant difference between using the paint straight from the tubes. So I've given this a couple of days for the paint to fully dry out, and despite adding some glycerin, there has still been some cracking, but it is only a cosmetic thing. Obviously I'll be interested to see how these re-wet and whether they're still as opaque and matte as they were straight from the tube. I've printed out a little swatch chart on some watercolour cardstock, so I'm going to go ahead and swatch these out, and I can do a quick comparison with my original swatch chart straight from the tube. So I'll do that and I'll come right back and we'll discuss it, and then I can get on with painting something. And here's the finished swatch chart. Colours are still vibrant, still very nice and flat, matte finish to them. In comparison to the swatch chart that I did straight from the tubes, obviously this time I haven't compared how they perform over black, but looking at the colours have stayed very true. a couple, I think, of maybe some of the darker blues are fractionally lighter, so they're going to have a little more transparency to them. I think that cerulean blue and the violet and the Prussian blue possibly going to be a little bit more transparent, but on the whole they're going to be perform very much like a watercolor, but have a much flatter and more sort of opaque finish to them. And I'm quite happy with that. I fully expect there to be some difference, because obviously we have some glycerin mixed in with these paints, and I am using a wet brush to pick up colour, so I'm diluting them down. But on the whole, that's performed very, very well directly from this palette. All I did was just mist a little bit of water over the top and then go in there with a wet paintbrush. So I've decided I want to, have a go at just actually creating a finished painted piece. So I've got some of the watercolour cardstock here, and I've just taped it down onto a board. It shouldn't buckle up, actually. I mean, it's been performing really, really well, but I just like having it down on a board, and I can move it to suit, whatever angle I want to work at. And I'm just going to go ahead and sketch out a design and then paint. I'm using a pink pencil here. This is one of the Pilot Colour Eno pencils. I like the pink. It tends to disappear once you start doing the painting. I don't have to erase any like graphite pencil lines, but it's there enough for me to see what I'm doing. I don't know, you may struggle just to see what I'm drawing, but I should be speeding this up anyway. And then I'm going to paint a nice sort of bright, sort of funky, somewhat abstract picture. So I'll just pop this onto fast forward, probably add a little bit of music, and we'll go from there. Now that the basic detail is all down, I'm going to just dry this off with my heat tool, and I can add some extra detail in with some pens. And for this, I'm going to use these Inkonic pens just because I have a good range of colours, and just to add in some doodle detail. I'm also going to either use a white gel pen or a white paint pen. Haven't decided which yet, depends on how fine I want the detail. But there's no white in this set, so I need to find a white from elsewhere. And finally, I've just stamped out the words "Make Art." I'm just going to pop them on, and just think I'll pop that there. And I'm going to call this one finished. I'm going to take it off my board, just trim it down slightly, and I'm going to pop it inside a journal. I've got one that's just like a scrapbook with blank pages, and I put loose pages in there so it keeps them all together. And here it is in my little album. Really impressed with the paints. I hope you can see that they're a lot flatter, and although these are not as opaque as when they came straight out of the tube, they're a lot more opaque than your standard watercolours. It's a flatter colour. Watercolour, because it's so transparent, it allows the brightness of the paper to show through. So this almost has the appearance of an acrylic, but in a water-soluble base. Really enjoyed it, really enjoyed adding the detail in with those pens, and just, you know, having a little bit of fun. Don't think you can't do this. It is so easy, you know, to just doodle and colour, and then it's in your journal. It's for your own pleasure. There's no right or wrong. Once again, I will pop some links down below if you're interested in these paints. If you're interested in the pens, I'll pop links below. There is a discount code that's available until July the 31st that will save you 10%. So, you know, please take a look while that offer is on if you are interested. But if not, you know, try this with other brands of gouache. Try this with some watercolours maybe if you've got, or even indeed with some acrylics. You could do something very, very similar with your acrylic paints. But basically, just have fun with the colours, have fun with some simple shapes, and just, you know, get some paint out and have, you know, an hour or so and just enjoy yourself. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I shall be back again soon. Bye.